Hey all you cozy campers, how's it going? Today there's some riveting stuff to talk about. Dishes! You know, the stuff that people eat off of or eat with. You know, plates, spoons, bowls, ladles, pots, bottles, flasks, barrels, oscilloscopes, the works. I'm mushwhimmortem and I'll be narrating Gabrofans 27's project. If you didn't know already, this is a presentation on the game Outer Wilds. Massive spoilers ahead for both the game and DLC. Go play it right now if you haven't. I don't want to spoil anything for you. But not every species have entered the same tools as each other. Some were more advanced than others, some have different needs than others, different lifestyles and cultures between species, to such an extent that the tools developed for each species differed between them in many ways. You'll come to find out that one big deviation is just in the kinds of dishes that were created between each species alone. There is a little care and detail put into the dishes for each species, and even more so for each of the Harthian travelers, each having their own campsite with their own dishes separated from each other. It is my goal with this presentation to explore all of this. What dishes, utensils, cookware, and other food-related tools do each species have? Why do they have each tool, the variety of food that each species can prepare with and eat off of these tools, and a look at the traveler's campsite somewhat in depth to learn about them as people. Because when else are you going to look at these dishes? I will keep this exploration entirely within the confines of the game, including poking around the internal files to see how things were named. I won't try to predict what the developers intended by creating or not creating things, and I won't go to unreleased speculatory or otherwise, quote-unquote, secondhand sources related to the game, so as to remain completely canon within the universe. So, without further ado, let's start with the Harthians. The Harthians have a plate and some bowls. The material looks to be ceramic or earthenware, as opposed to the wooden or metallic. The off-colored base of the plate could be a porcelain glazed finish. Ignore the mug and the wrench in the background. Every traveler has a bowl, but not everyone has two bowls or a plate, namely Gabro and Rybeck. Now, look at the mug, but still ignore the wrench. They've invented 3 kinds of mugs and 1 regular cup. Everyone except Felspart has a normal mug, but everyone has at least one of each other's mugs. Everyone except Rybeck, Felspart, and the hatchling have a normal cup. Each mug also looks ceramic. The cups look like paper. Lemao. The benefit of a mug is the ability to drink hot beverages, or hot soups, and the existence of 3 mugs seems to suggest a lot of hot drinks. Coffees, teas, soups, hot chocolate, water, yucky, but I'll have. These are the only cups that the Harthians have, and the paper cup doesn't inspire much cold beverage confidence in me. Though, you can still drink cold beverages in mugs, I guess. The multi-utensil is one of Harthian's only eating utensils and is found at every campsite, usually hanging next to the fire. Normally it would be built out of stainless steel alloy, but I don't know if the Harthians are advanced enough to be able to produce it, so I'd say this is built out of aluminum. Built for backpacking and camping, this tool has a spoon, fork, bottle/can opener, and 4 hex head wrench bits, one acting as a loop to hook a caliber around. The aluminum casting, alongside the physical size and hole in the middle, makes it perfect for lightweight carry, and its all-in-one design cuts down on the need for multiple utensils. This utensil is actually designed identical to a real product released by CRKT sometime around or before 2011, one that you can still buy today. The product page lists some specifications, namely the size of the hex heads, 6, 8, and 10 millimeters. Only 3 cutouts are wrenches. The wingtips act as pry bars for cans and as flathead screwdrivers, and that the whole cutout acts as a handle, as well as to reduce weight. The stick, comparatively, is a stick. Not much to say yet. While not eating utensils, the travelers also have a ladle, hatchet, and wrench. Ignore the big pot. The ladle is likely aluminum, while the axe head and wrench are likely steel. The ladle is obviously used for cooking stews of soup, but you may be asking, Gabrofan, why do you have a hatchet in the utensils section? This is because each traveler has one at their campsite, used to chop woods for their fire, thus used for cooking. You may also be asking, Gabrofan, why the fuck do you have a wrench in the utensil section? This is because each traveler has a wrench with them, if not holding down a piece of paper, then hanging at the campfire, thus used for cooking? I don't know, man. They all have at least one, and they're each right next to the cookware, so do the math. Now, pay attention to the big pot. Each traveler has two kinds of pots, a big pot and a small pot, both likely made of aluminum as to avoid rusting quickly like iron or steel. There really isn't much to say here. They need something to cook with, so they got pot. Two pots, if you will. More interesting, however, is their more unique cookware. A kettle and a wok of some sorts. The kettle looks to be fully metal, conduction, convection heating through fire, also likely aluminum. You all know what a kettle is. It is used as a specialized tool for boiling water, either located naturally or brought along with. Each traveler has one set up at the fire. Everyone but Felspar. Actually, in research, I found that travelers has a reservoir of water attached to their ships alongside the oxygen tank. Everyone except Felspar, at least. So as long as they can use that water, we assume it is potable. It seems as if their boiled water needs are more for luxury items than strictly for survival, such as teas, coffees, and hot chocolates. The wok is more interesting, as we only see one in game, and it's being used to make, presumably, sap wine. A common wok material is carbon steel infused with a small percentage of carbon, and I feel the Hardians are able to work with this material, but the look of the material also is the same as other aluminum metals in this game, so I identify it as aluminum. We only see it to make sap wine, possibly reducing something with a flame from the metal barrel underneath, but logically this can be used for a variety of cooking purposes. Or just sap wine. You do you, Porphy. The Hardians have 4 different types of barrels: small, medium, wide, and big. Though the picture doesn't show the barrel as well. Imagine a short, stocky barrel, almost like a wheel of Parmesan cheese. Wooden with metallic trimmings and fasteners, you primarily see these next to the cabin Porphy stands in front of, but we can also find more behind the cabin Mal stands in front of, above and between Mal and Gneiss, and one next to Gneiss. Used to store foodstuffs or liquids, barrels are, well, barrels, and in a select few places there's also kegs. Next to the sign in the village pointing up towards the observatory, between Gneiss, Temfra, and Galena, there are 2 kegs set up. Just barrels with a faucet tap stood upright and its side on some table legs. What might these contain? Likely water, but the funnier answer is alcohol. We've got 2 bottles. Bottle 1 and Bottle 2. A short green bottle and a large yellow bottle, both likely made of glass. These can be found at every traveler's campsite as well. These will be more important later on, so keep them in mind for later in the presentation. Rating our liquid and container high, 2 more bottles, the Hardian standard issue flask, and this metal bottle. Starting with the metal bottle, this is the only one found in the entire game, and is strapped to Mika's side. No one has one, not even Slate, Mika's presumed mentor. Thus, I conclude that Mika is an inventive genius, both in design and fabrication. It's hard to tell what purpose it serves, but the design looks similar to that of a vacuum flask, or a thermos, a thermally insulated liquid container. A basic aluminum container makes no sense on its own, as its thermal conductivity renders any hot beverages application pointless and dangerous, and, being honest, that being a thermos is a more interesting answer. The flask, also known as a hip flask, is self-explanatory, likely aluminum as well. Slate, Esker, Gabbro, and Felspar all have at least one crate full of them at their campsite. Neither Chert nor Ryback have any of these crates, speaking to their personalities. For some odd reason, the hatchling has a crate full of them in their ship, with the intended purpose of a flask being an alcohol container and the personalities of the characters who have them, it is safe to assume that these flasks contain alcohol, likely sap wine. Lovable little bunch of drunks. Like, most of them have at least one crate full of these flasks. It's insane. I hope they aren't drinking these and piling the ships. Lastly, we have our cans. Two types of cans. Round, cornered, rectangular sardine cans, and a more standard cylindrical marshmallow tin. Modern tin cans are made of steel with a plastic liner on the inside to prevent corrosion, but historically they were made with tinted steel coated with tin. They are pretty self-explanatory. Tin cans needed for preserved foods, namely sardines and marshmallows. I say sardines, but I just mean a non-specific fish, used to prevent foods from going bad and easy transport of preserved goods. Somewhat of an underwhelming last item for the Hearthians. So, what can they eat based on the tools they have? That is the question. The answer? Respectively, a lot of things. The bowls and plates allow for many different kinds of dishes to be served, and are not the limiting factor here. Remember, we are assuming that what we can find is the extent of each of these species' culinary inventions. Nothing more, and nothing less. Rather, the limiting factor is their utensils. They don't have any knives, assuming the edge of their multi-utensil could be used to separate food, but the food would need to be tender or soft in order to cut. The cookware they have seems to suggest a lot of soups and stews, but could be used to cook other foods regardless of their shape. Lots of bottles, mugs, and flasks all suggest a large presence of liquids in their diets, leading back to the soups. Really, the only solid foods we see Hearthians eat are fish and marshmallows, so I must conclude that they can eat a variety of meals, but their kitchenware seems to suggest a big liquid diet. The Hearthians have a good president so far. There's a lot of world-building present, and you'll come to see the devs' appreciation for detail when we get to each traveler's campsite. An awfully good president. I mean, wow, we're 12 minutes into this thing already. The Nomai seem to have a lot in store for us if this is anything to go by. But I want you to think back and try to remember how many dishes the Nomai may have had, keeping the Hearthians in mind. Got a number? Cool. So, how many do they have? Two items. Bowl and box. That's it. No utensils. No cups. Not even a damn plate. Anyways, so they have a bowl and a box. The bowl looks to be earthenware, looks to be a very weathered porcelain. The design of the pattern on the outside looks like a porcelain glaze finish. The box is more than likely a porcelain. The sheen of the material and the chunks broken off give it away. There's not really much to talk about here. And the box is a box, for sure. You can unpack the game files and browse through the game in the Unity editor, checking file names for everything in game, and this item is labeled as a box. I allow this as this is in the game, just not immediately visible, and I'm not trying to predict developer intent, as it is reading off directly what the developer wrote into the game. Now, you may be asking yourself, wait, haven't I seen these cups in the Nomai ruins? And if you are, then you're onto something. Just kidding, it's a vase. Yeah, they didn't invent cups. Now, from some angles, you might think it's a cup. And it does look like a cup. It's found on tables, near boxes. I mean, it's also shaped like a cup. A rather cumbersome cup, but a cup nonetheless. And look! It's near the communal area. It could be a cup. For sure. I'm just fucking with you. The game files also reveal it as a vase. A thin vase at that, and the larger pot we find is a thick vase. So, they never invented any utensils. No cups, no containers, or even any miscellaneous items. No cookware of any kind either. They have a bowl and a box. What are their eating capabilities? I mean, they look like goats of some kind. Maybe they're just herbivores. Putting grasses and bowls and boxes isn't really a problem. You don't need any cookware or utensils to just pick up a clump of grass and eat it. Maybe, I mean, the Nomai on Never Twin would probably need to prepare the cacti very carefully, but it's possible. They also, some of them uses mind powers or some shit to levitate some rocks in the quantum moon. Maybe they just have telekinesis. Might require the stars, but they might just levitate the grass up their mouths. I'll break the rules a bit and assume that they have some kind of cookware that just, degraded over time. So maybe they don't have to eat raw grass all the time. Maybe roasted grains. The inhabitants, the Auk, as I'll call them, they invented a bowl and a plate, already much more reasonable than the Nomai. They look to be metallic for sure, and look to be dark metals. The cop-out answer is that it's an alien metal from another world.
Pause. But that's no fun, so I'll say it's some sort of cast darkened steel, as if from an assembly line. Unpause.
It looks rough, it looks cast, it looks manufactured. There's scratch marks on the plates as well. It's worth mentioning they did not invent any utensils, but with talons on their hands and the scratch marks on the bowls and plates, it's likely they just used their hands. The dishes look to be built for a mixture of aesthetics and stability, with struts either adding to the contract area with the surface below, or physically propping it up above the surface. Either works. Holy shit, why is the goblet so fucking big? They invented a goblet, or a chalice of sorts. Looks as if aesthetics were the driving factor over function, as it doesn't look very stable. Made of the same metal the dishes were made of, but with a rim and some protruding features. The rim and features look to be made of a nondescript metal tan material. Maybe some kind of wood? Unsure. It's so fucking big though, who did that? Finally, yes, finally, they invented a jug. Wooden with a metallic cork and handle, likely used to store liquids. We've been through this all before. It's awfully big. For real this time. Up to the Alex's knees, probably. I may have seen one of these floating around the ring world, and I thought they were flax of some sorts. Huge flax, but hey, maybe the Alex were just that disturbed by the eye of the universe. But no, they were, in fact, jewelry boxes. We can yet again look internally and see the objects are named as jewelry boxes. An open and shut case. Now, I was totally lying to you earlier about the goblets being big. A trick of perspective, if you will. The goblets were actually normal size when you compare them to the Alex hand size. The plates, on the other hand, they look fairly small relative to the Alex hand. Really small. An outstretched hand can grab the plate like a tennis ball, looks like. So we covered the Hearthians, we covered the Nomai, but what can the owl eat with their dishes? Well, they can eat a lot of things. When you really think about it, it's all you need. A bowl, a plate, a cup, and you're able to have a nice meal. Again, from the scratches on their plates and the lack of any obvious utensils, they likely have talents that they used to eat. The size of the plates make me curious though. What were their proportion sizes? They are massive creatures with respect to the Nomai and Hearthians, so they would have needed a lot of calories. Maybe their culture revolves around multiple course meals. The Alex seem to like communal activities, if their third year is anything to go by, so maybe they use multiple courses to extend time together. Again, we break the rules and assume that they had some form of cooking appliance. I mean, they invented a simulation, they have had to have invented an oven or something. Or maybe not. The ring world is oxygen rich, so maybe they use open flames to cook. It's much to think about. Yeah, lastly, I'd like to look at each of the travelers' campsites. Ironically, we start with Slate, who isn't really a traveler at all. Their campsite is the first you see in the game, though. They got everything at arm's reach, everything with its own place in the scene. They have at least one of everything that comes standard issue, more or less, with the other travelers. You're going to see those mugs, bottles, that campfire setup, marshmallows a lot over the next few minutes. Back to Slate, the bench is propped up by 2 flask crates. A permanent temporary fix, likely. There are 2 seating mats set out and 2 marshmallow sticks. Technically 3, around the area. I'd guess for the hatchling when they wake up. Make note of the wrench weighing down the paper as well. It's like a mini workshop. Well managed and well stocked. Esker, my fucking guy. Esker is a lonely guy. Gender neutral. And their campsite reflects that. Not much is actually set out. A couple mugs, plates, cookware for one, 8 flasks. There are 2 seating mats in the area. One is on the log bench behind Esker, but the other one is behind the food bench, almost kicked aside in disuse. Another wrench acting as a paperweight too. And a marshmallow can half sunk into the ground. Looks like no one's visited him in a while. There is some stuff at the outpost cabin though. 3 mugs, some bottles, and marshmallow material for one. They do actually have a lot more reserves too. 24 flasks, totaling to 32, 1.5 kegs, and a lot more marshmallow sardines, and the funky marshmallow. Plenty of resources for any traveler to restock with. Too bad no one needs the lunar outpost anymore though. But don't worry, I'm on my way over! Sure, what the fuck is up with you, nerd? They got a tiny little campsite set up. It must run cold, because their one seating mat is set right next to the fire, on their planet right next to the fucking sun. But anyways, marshmallow materials for one setup and ready to be used. Got a research telescope set up right away from the food for that work-life separation. Radio set up for some tunes, but for some reason, their tools are right next to the food, and their signal scope is right underneath the liquids. Get your fucking act together, you slut. You also have 2 cups, probably dirty, and you're missing your large pot. Oh my fucking god. Anyways, they have a nice little campsite, a perfect little bubble for them to get lost in. And what a view for the stars, too. Hi, Gabrielle.
Hi.
How's the water today?
Wet.
Is it, though?
Well, actually, I've been thinking about that as of late. You see, I think the question is somewhat involved. Is wetness defined by the presence of water on a given surface? Or is it defined by the water that remains in the removal of said water? Does it have to do with being submerged, or otherwise inside, of a body of water? Or is it more an angle of saturation, water inside of something? You see, I think it is something more than that, more profound. When you think of water, what do you think of it as? Do you see it as a body, flowing and coursing through the village as
let's continue for a bit.
as a resource,
Their living area is very relaxed. Objects,
something to be worshipped
not
for its
scattered,
life-giving
but
properties,
resting,
cleaning in all senses of
buried
the
in the
word,
sand,
water balloons, the answer to
a
water
radio
being
set
wet
up
lies
for
deeper
some
in how it is
tunes,
seen and what it does,
or
more so than what it is
communications,
for its mere
but
presence.
whatever.
Wetness is a state brought upon by
Bottles
water,
and
yes,
mugs,
but it
a
means so
couple
much more
of
than how it
flasks,
appears.
marshmallows with stick pre-applied. The works.
Purpose, its reason, its
Let's
goal. Why differentiate
leave them
the
be
goal?
to ponder, and we'll come back later. The campsite is much more interesting, I feel, than their hammock spot. Get past the surface layer and their quirks and charms, and you find a much more composed core with its own quirks and charms. All the cookware you need for once, but only a bowl to eat. All 3 mugs and a cup, but the cups are all upside down. Don't want to get the water in the drinking cups after all. A paper acting as a wrench weight, showing that they do actually do research. And what fucked up research is that? Like, holy shit, that paper is fucking heavy. It holds that light as a feather wrench down. Seems like there's more to them than meets the eye. And I fuck with that. Here's a nice screenshot I took. Marshmallow propped up ready to be charred and eaten. A very soggy seating mat set up in a nice spot to meditate. And some cups, buried into the solid rock. It's probably quantum or something. I don't know, man. Let's check up on Gabbro again.
I think it stems back to our ancestors in their development, the Proto-Harthians, as I'll call them. Think about it. For all of their lives and existence, they had only ever known and experienced water. Forget submersion or presence, it was existence for them.
Hey, so is water wet?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. See ya.
Bye.
Ryback's got a cozy little setup on Brutal Hollow. The most notable thing here is that they've incorporated gnome-like creations into the campsite. At least a little. 2 thick vases are set up, and there are shards of gnome-like earthenware all around the campsite, embedded into rocks itself. They're currently the only one doing any work, as they have 6 sheets of paper all around the resting spot, weighed down by mugs and a bowl. Actually, they don't have anything to cook with besides a kettle, and technically a marshmallow stick, or anything to chop wood for a fire. So maybe they're just out here sipping tea. With all the mugs they got set out, it might be the case. Outside of the pitcher's bounds, Ryback has their little scout set up to check the surface integrity of their platform, which I think is a neat detail. They'll Spar has a fair amount of, things set up around their camp, but it looks kind of sparse at a distance. Despite their ship electrocuting you if you get too close, they somehow have a lot of equipment and rashes out in their campsite. A tin of marshmallows, a +1 flask of alcohol, a few sardine cans, and a full set of cookware excluding a kettle. It's all spread out, really taking up the space and making it theirs. Not in any sort of dominating way or overwhelming sense, but their presence is felt everywhere in their, albeit tiny, campsite. So, Hatchling is technically now a traveler, but even if they weren't, they got 6 slides of information to go through, so here we are. Pictured here are the equipment corner and walls on either side of the Hatchling's computer. Lots of marshmallows for sure. The stick in their ship confirms to me that the travelers bring their sticks with them, and keep personal sticks to use at their campfires. Note the crate of flags in the equipment area. If they do indeed contain alcohol, then shit. Hatchling is one cool cucumber. Also note the shivering on the right, our next area of interest. Aside from standard equipment, bowls and plates, mugs, bottles, pots, there are a few interesting things to note here. And you may have already spotted one of them, or maybe even 3. First up is the hatchling's hatchet to the right of the shelving, which you could have not noticed if it isn't in the picture. There's some form of binding wrapping around the handle and axe head, different from the other travelers. Next are the electronics on the top left. I'm unsure as to what they could be, maybe oscilloscopes, but they could inform us as to what the hatchling's quote-unquote role is in Outer Wilds ventures. They also have some lids for the mugs. At first, just a round lid as a separate piece for a knob on the top for holding on to. Nothing special, but at the same time, no one else has these. And if you haven't noticed already, the hatchling ship contains the only instance of transparent bottles in the game. Both kind of bottles have a transparent model that I only managed to find in the hatchling ship. If you remember all the way back to the beginning, this is why I believe the bottles are glass. It seems the transparency is just an effect on the bottles themselves, as you can see a tint of yellow and green on the transparent bottle overlaid with transparency effect. The liquid on the inside is just a solid object, as it doesn't react to any motion from the ship. Not like I expected a liquid simulation for a object most players would never notice, and that aren't visible 95% of the time when the ship is accelerating. But you know what I mean. There are more of these bottles around the ship. One is hanging in the medical cabinet alongside the hatchling's multi-utensil and wrench, and some are more hidden behind the creative flask. The cabinet bottle is interesting as it's been scaled down to make it look like a medicine of sorts. Above the hatchling are some storage compartments. The compartment above and behind the computer confirms to me that every traveler have their own logs they bring with them as firewood, and why every log pile at each camp looks the same. They got more marshmallows and a big pot as well. Above the medical cabinet and equipment storage is a net holding up some tanks of something. As nearing the end of this, I don't know what these could be, as I don't recognize them from anywhere else in the game. Maybe rocket fuel. And then there's this thing. I don't know what it is at all. It looks like a pot with a handle, but it's located right next to the eject button at the cockpit, and it's connected to nothing underneath the surface holding it up. It looks like a cup holder. I have no idea what it could be, but, you know. Hello. And this is where the Traveler section ends. So, what have we learned? Let's go in order, I suppose. The Hearthians have invented a ton of tools and materials needed for eating and preparing food. Most all cater to the travelers' lifestyles. From dishes to utensils, cookware to bottles, mugs to flax, hell, even barrels to kegs. The Hearthians are, culinarily, locked in. They have some quirks when it comes to food, such as needing a wrench at every campfire for some reason, but overall, they can eat a lot. You wouldn't think it from Ryback's camp, but they can eat a wide variety of food. The Nomai, however, are fucking stupid. They've invented 2 dishes. What we thought may have been another dish was a vase based on contextual and editorial clues. And they never invented plates or spoons. There's something to be said about whether or not they needed much more to live off of, but it certainly would have not killed them to invent a cup. Maybe they didn't have time before the interloper, though. Maybe the Nomai cup was just about to be invented, but got hit by a metro ton of gamma radiation all at once, and just couldn't. Or maybe they just eat grass. What we see is what we get. I guess they don't really need much more than a plate, bowl, cup, and jug. Maybe they only eat raw food. In any case, the talons on their hands are strong enough to cut scratches into metal, so I think they would have gotten it figured out. Finally, each of the travelers, including Slate, have a unique campsite tailored to them, and suited for their needs. They don't have all the same gear, but mostly, a lot of what the Hearthians own are standard issue for each traveler. Honestly, there isn't too much to say about the campsites themselves that hasn't already been said, and they kind of work to speak to the personalities of the travelers better than they do as just places to inspect. My favorite is Gabbros, of course. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope the voice wasn't obnoxious or whatever. And you may be wondering why I didn't try to predict developer intentions. You know, like what the actual reasoning are for each object's inclusion in the game, or the lack of objects in some areas, or species. Why did I only stop at inspecting game files? Why didn't I reference any concept art? Well, it's simple, really. Because that's boring as hell. They created all the Hearthian objects to characterize the Hearthians. They didn't feel the need to, or resources, or development time, to include more dishes for the Nomai. They're just background elements, and the story and gameplay are more important. All they needed to do was give the impression that these worlds were lived in, not actually create worlds that were lived in. In-universe, each planet is likely bigger, with rooms and houses to allow for cooking appliances that wouldn't need to be found outside. Do you hear how boring it sounds? This whole presentation, wrapped up in a few sentences. Where's the joy? The whimsy? There's no fun in revealing the trick while the magic show's still happening. That's why. Okay, well, bye.